Hey, I wanted to ask you, I know when you, I just thought of this like a minute ago, when you worked with the Ottawa Renegades, didn't you?
I did. 2 glorious seasons, the last 2.
Well, when I collect jerseys, I try to get stuff that nobody else on earth has. I have no interest in a Tom Brady jersey or a Brett Favre jersey or any of that garbage because there's millions of them. So today I strapped on a classic Lonnie Gleiberman era Ottawa Rough Riders uni with the flaming R's of the very early 90s and silver, and it was signed by Tom Burgess. Yeah, he threw for 5,000 yards in 93. I've got the 92 version. They made the Canada 125 patch a little bit small, but I can work on that a little bit later. I think it's an absolute tragedy that logo only lasted 2 years. Of all the things the Gleibermans screwed up royally, that was not one of them. I thought that was pretty cool, but I digress. About the Blue Jays, I know that 3 weeks ago there was a lot of optimism with their starting rotation, and I was hearing chatter that Shane Bieber would take a little while to get going, but the rest were all good to go. Now, what do we make of it?
Oh, Brendan, they're going to be fine, and they're going to be fine in large part because everybody in the American League's dreadful. I can't remember a time where the Tampa Rays are, perennial October team. I'll try that in English. And they're 15 games above 500. The Yankees are 15 games above 500. But guess what? They're going to be without Aaron Judge for at least the next 8 weeks. I know they've won a couple of games without him. The Blue Jays aren't very good right now, but they're on their way to getting healthy, and they're going to be fine. An AL that has nobody in the American League Central worth a salt. Like when the White Sox are leading your division, that tells you all you need to know. And, we'll see what the Mariners are going to be. By September, the Blue Jays will be in the mix, and then where will they be post-trade deadline, injuries, health, all that stuff, that remains to be seen. But they're going to get Scherzer back. They're getting Bieber back. They're getting Cease back. It's been a pitching staff that they've just been patching things together. They're actually going to start to get some competence and an actual starting rotation, which is what they need.
At what stage, I'll throw this one at you, at what stage do you think that if they're still having trouble patching the starting rotation together, would they go out and make a move now that we're past 60 days into the season?
Well, the trade deadline's basically 6-7 weeks away.
Isn't that crazy to think? I feel like the season just started and we're that close to the trade deadline already.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, it started the end of March, just nobody was paying attention with all the Canadian teams doing what they were doing in the playoffs and the rest. Let me bring up the standings here. So they're 2 games below 500, right? You're saying to yourself, well, that's a problem. That used to be what baseball was. They sit right now 3 games back. Sorry, they're in a wild card spot right now. They're fine. So the fact that they're getting Cease back from what appeared to be a low-grade hamstring issue is huge. I'm not sure what Shane Bieber is going to be for them, but we'll see. But if you have moving forward a healthy and a competent Kevin Gausman, a healthy and a competent Trey Savage, you get Dylan Cease back into the mix, and then combined Bieber and Scherzer, if they can combine to be one competent human, you suddenly have 4 starting pitchers. You're in pretty good shape.
All right, enough of all that Blue Jay nonsense. We've had lots of baseball talk today. You're somebody who's very much into Canadian sport, and there was a big bit of news that came out yesterday that you wanted to mention that has a hook to the Olympics and youth sports and all the rest. No, whoops, I'm on the wrong one here. I was gonna bring up the I want to ask football? You. Yeah, well, and before we get to that, I wanted to ask you about the World Cup games that are coming up. I had a friend who won tickets to a game in Vancouver, Canada versus Qatar, and people around here don't care that much about the World Cup. I haven't really paid a lot of attention to it yet. Are you excited about any of these matchups that are coming on Canadian soil? Like, I have to think even those of us non-soccer fans have to be excited about it.
Here's what's going to happen. I was talking to Dave about this yesterday. This thing's going to start, and it's almost going to be like the Olympics. We're all going to turn into ice dancing experts. I remember having this very conversation on this very station 7 years ago last week, or 2 weeks ago, that nobody cares about the Raptors. That's Toronto's team. Whatever. Okay, so Kawhi hits this shot, blah, blah, blah. The next thing I know, that's in May of 2019. The next thing I know, I'm getting pictures sent to me of like 15,000 people at Mosaic Stadium watching the Raptors in the championship game up on the Jumbotron. It's a wild thing that happens with these kind of events, Brendan, that no one's paying attention and no one seems to care. And then it starts. And then it starts and it gains a little momentum and it takes on a life of its own and you're waving the flag and there's the Canadiana aspect to it. But all of this hinges on the national team taking care of its business and making sure they don't blow it. So that's a big part of all of this here. They open on Friday against Bosnia. Then they go to Vancouver, they play Qatar on the 18th of June, and then Switzerland on the 24th. They need to get out of the group stage. They should get out of the group stage. All of those things. So while people aren't into it now, I promise you they're going to get into it if Canada's team delivers.
Are we worried about three critical Canadian players with question marks, Cone and also Moise, Bombito, and Alphonso Davies?
Yeah, so like Davies is the best left back in the world. He's the captain of the national team. He just helped Bayern Munich lift a Champions League trophy, which is the championship of Europe. And he's had an ACL and a couple of hamstring issues, and I don't expect he's going to play on Friday. That's going to be a loss. Today, Kone went out, like he arrived at the practice facility and he left, and Christian Jacka One Soccer is reporting that it's just a fever. And then Bombito, who's really emerged as a real threat, he broke his left tibia last fall, and the question is, will he be ready? Will he not? Can he play? Can he not? He played in Edmonton against Uzbekistan for 30 minutes, then limped off the field. So those are three critical pieces to this team. And, you know, if you have them healthy, it's a game changer. It just doesn't appear that the Canadian team will have them.
What are you expecting for the opening match on Friday against Bosnia? How do you like Canada's chances?
Well, Bosnia is an interesting story because they only qualified for this thing in April. You know, it was a last-ditch backdoor qualification. It was going to be them or Italy. They come in, they have some injuries themselves. Brendan, it's going to be, like, my foreshadowing of this is the walk to the stadium for both supporters is actually going to be a news story. The Bosnian Ultras are their own ball of wax, man. They're playing their own march. I just hope no Canadian says the wrong thing to one of these Ultras, because then things may get a little spicy.
You think that could happen?
Oh, yeah.
Does that happen a lot in soccer?
It can. Hell yeah. Of course.
All right.
Oh, yeah. This is real stuff. I'll tell you this story, Brendan. So 2013, I was fortunate enough to be sent to Belgrade, Serbia. Canada is playing Serbia in the Davis Cup semifinal, the World Cup of Tennis. So we're in downtown Belgrade, really nice hotel. We're staying at the same place as the team. Well, down the street, we arrived on a Sunday. We were staying there for 8 days. On like the Wednesday, Croatia was playing Serbia in a Euro Cup qualifier. The Croatian team was staying at the same hotel. When we arrived on Tuesday and Wednesday to the hotel, it was full airport security, wanding you down. Your bags went through the x-ray machine, everything. they did not allow fans in the stadium for Croatia versus Serbia on a Wednesday in September because they were afraid of what might happen. So
Wow.
all this stuff that you see and hear, it's not just like it's real stuff. Like this is religion. This matters more than a lot of things matter to a lot of people in a lot of places in the world.
Sometimes we don't totally understand that because we're different from a lot of the rest of the world. We're not so hyper-focused on soccer like some of these other countries are.
Yeah.
Hey, getting back to the Blue Jays, John Schneider shuffled the lineup yesterday, and all of a sudden Vladimir Guerrero was batting leadoff. What do you make of that?
I think they're just trying to get Vlad going, and that's a big part of all this. Now he's back in the 2-hole today. Guerrero told them, look, I'm willing to do whatever you guys think is required for me to do it. And so, they shuffled the deck a little bit, and Schneider's point was, why not? Now today, George Springer's back batting lead up. It's over the course of 162, these are the things that are going to happen, but they're especially going to happen when Vlad's not doing Vlad things. Like an OPS of 740, only 3 home runs so far. Like they're trying anything and everything to get Guerrero back to being 2-7.
One stat that I've seen you've posted, Vlad's isolated power of 085 ranks 14th on the Blue Jays behind Miles Straw and just ahead of Tyler Heineman. Speaking of Heineman, Alejandro Kirk is going to be back soon. Brandon Valenzuela is really going. He had his first career walk-off yesterday. What do the Blue Jays do with their backup catcher when Kirk returns? Could they carry 3 catchers?
No. And now this becomes... will the Blue Jays Blue Jay, or will the Blue Jays do the right thing? Because the right thing to do is keep Valenzuela up. Valenzuela is more competent. Valenzuela is the better hitter. Valenzuela manages situations better. And you mentioned the walk-off yesterday. He's showing a little clutch too. Tyler Heineman is just not a big leaguer. But he's out of options and team control, and the air quote, we're afraid to lose him. Fine, lose him. He's airmailing balls over the third baseman's head. They don't have any trust in him. It's okay to lose Tyler Heineman. Go with the kid. I don't think they're going to do that, Brendan, but to me, that's the right thing to do.
It's kind of makes me think of Josh Tolley when he was the catcher. He really shouldn't be in the big leagues, but they felt like R.A. Dickey needed somebody who could catch him, and I felt like it kind of held them back in some ways. Talking a little more CFL, Danny Machocha went on Montreal radio yesterday, and he says he feels Quebec City is a strong CFL market. We've talked about this ad nauseum, but what do you think? Do you think a 10th team could really be headed there? Do you think this is real?
I don't know if a 10th team is headed there. But it was interesting hearing Danny's perspective on it with Mitch Melnick. Because to me, I've always believed, Brendan, that Quebec City, the power brokers in that town, had no interest in the CFL. But if you follow some of the influential voices in that market, they're reporting that for the last year, there's been real interest in building a $350 million stadium, in getting a team up there where La Colisée used to be, where the Nordiques used to play. And Danny's point was, yeah, I think if it's done properly, if it's done right, this can work. And he pointed to the fact that Laval draws 20,000 people for football, that their major junior team does 14,000, 15,000 for hockey. That they have a independent league baseball team that draws 4,000 or 5,000 people. A rivalry with the Alouettes would be huge. All of this is, to me, hinges on 3 things. 1, the blessing of the Alouettes in ownership, which appears as if it's there. 2, will there be a new stadium? They say $350 million. That's a $450 million question. And 3 are the business power brokers in that city interested, willing to buy suites, to pay the corporate sponsorship dollars to make this happen. Stuart Johnson has talked about a 10th team around 2030. 4 years out, that kind of lines up if if all these things are able to come together. And the fact that it's gained this much noise makes it the most real and the most intriguing that I can ever remember Quebec City really being about having a CFL franchise.
You know, I hadn't even thought of this until recently, but I think the guy you're talking about, the power brokers, and I don't know a lot about who runs football in Quebec, but I do know that there's a fellow by the name of Mr. Alex Tanguay, who's kind of the leader behind the Laval football program for the last 30 years. And he did an interview a few years ago where he just said, there's no interest for a CFL team here. And then you were here last year for the Vanier Cup. The year before, he would have come here for the Mitchell Bowl, Laval versus Regina. And now he's singing a totally different tune and talking about how great it would be to have a nice stadium. And wow, you go out west in a place like Regina, it's really nice. And I'm kind of wondering in my mind how much of an impact the fact that Rouge et Or came here to play the Rams had on him and pushing the Quebec business community. Now, that is all total speculation on my part, but it just seems like his tone has changed quite dramatically, and we're starting to feel like there's probably a better than 50% chance, at least I am, that this will get done at some point. There's been a lot of chatter about the CFL contract and what's going to be important with DAZN, the new broadcast partner. To me, I just want to see them do a very different broadcast than TSN does. I feel like the TSN broadcast feels a little bit stale at times, and that is not at all to besmirch them. I think they do a good job. I just think it's inevitable if you have one network and one group of people for so long, eventually you lack a little bit of creativity. I like it when you have multiple different sets and multiple different personalities. But to you, what is going to be the most important thing with DAZN to make this work and be a success for everybody?
Yeah, I think storytelling is going to be so important. Features, get to know some of these players, bring a Thursday night football element to it. DAZN doesn't have studios, Brendan. So will the panel just be a traveling roadshow every week? I think bringing a younger, fresher panel of former players is going to be really important. People who have recently left the field, so they have much more of an idea, not just of what they're up against, but what's happening out there. But I just really believe there's going to be more bells and whistles and sizzle to all of this, and storytelling's at the heart of it, and not just doing the same thing again and again, like not just like a fresh coat of paint, but a total remodel of what this thing has been.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And one thing I was even a little bit disappointed with was when Bell Media announced that some games were going to be on CTV, and the length of how the broadcast looked different was in the opening. They showed the graphics and they laughed that this was the first time in 38 years that it was going to be on CTV. And that was it. They didn't have any theme song, no different graphics. They didn't even have fun with the old jackets. And sometimes I think sports is never meant to be serious. You're supposed to have a little bit of fun with that. And we're seeing NBC and some of the other networks use Bob Costas to go retro. I love retro. Not everybody does, but I think the point you're making is we just need to see a little more creativity that you would see if you had multiple different networks. I remember the network you used to work for, Sportsnet, did the first ever Banjo Bowl in Winnipeg. It was done by Jamie Campbell. Hardly anybody remembers that Jamie Campbell did a handful of CFL games, and he's a great broadcaster anyways. It was just cool to see different faces, hear different voices, and I think that's essentially the point you're making.
Yeah, and look, we've only known things really one way for how long now? 18 years now? I'm pumped to see what an entirely different perspective this entire thing is going to be.
Totally. We'll leave it at that. Arash, thank you as always. Next week, next time I'm on, I'll find an Ottawa Renegades jersey that I can wear.
I love it. I love it. I'll have a story about that player, I'm sure.